Oh, hello internet. Been a while, eh? But this is not a long video, so I'll get right to it. The conservative and traditionalist right created wokeness. We start with the traditional situation. The orthodox worldview was supported by power, and change happened relatively slowly over the centuries. We come to the problem. Human civilization has accelerated massively and is no longer changing in a way that tradition can deal with. Tradition, as a self-evident method of stabilizing a society, is over. Conservatives do not all strictly reject this, but even those who are ostensibly the most forward-looking, the tech bros, are decidedly neoclassicist in their aristocratic ambitions. Starting in the 17th century, Western technology and science has been rapidly undermining traditional Western worldviews, most notably the monotheistic God and the divine right of kings. But in spite of this, the holders of power remained stubbornly, dogmatically behind their increasingly unsupported narratives, and they failed to rejuvenate them until it was far too late. And the whole time, in the face of even the most reasonable criticism, they remained as smugly, sanctimoniously, self-importantly declarative of their own correctness and dismissive of any other view or way of life. To say nothing of their inconsistency, if you want someone who can beat even an outspoken male feminist in rank hypocrisy, no one beats a conservative commentator, preferably an evangelical preacher or Tory pundit. So then, in the wake of all this came Foucault's philosophy of power, and those who had been dismissed decided, in quite a Nietzschean irony, that in order to feel included in this new modern human society, that they had to co-opt the moralistic weapons of their enemy. And I put that word in quote marks because I want to be absolutely clear. If the traditional worldview had compromised just a little bit faster, as they knew they eventually would have to, this would never have been a war. Real, meaningful compromise I'm talking about. But you can't compromise, can you? You are so sure you're right, and there can be no other way. Monotheistic exceptionalism is a plague upon humanity. And I will concede that the Abrahamic cults are not the only culprits, but they are just the worst. Many people have struggled to define wokeness. Well, here is my definition. Wokeness is the politics of transferring power to marginalized people. The distinction between moderates and radicals on both sides is the extent to which this transferal is to be absolute. For both the radical leftist and rightist, the goal is to entirely subjugate the bigots and expunge them from society. For moderates, it is more about what is generally permissible in the confines of polite society, although in certain countries the concept of polite society is increasingly obsolete, so maybe there are wider problems to solve. By the above definition, I am moderately woke, and I feel I can defend that position well enough. But there's a twist. Hannah! In Hannah Arendt's Crisis in Culture, there is a line where she refers to those whose society has never quite accepted, and she explicitly mentions homosexuals. But in the same piece, she suggests that it is exactly in this place, outside society as such, that we find the source and the wellspring of many of the most basic acts of human creativity. Which is why the gays are so good at theatre, darling. But what would happen if wokeness became the new orthodoxy? If an aesthetic of smugness and moral preening emerged as a social credit for expressing a new type of power? What, I ask then, would happen if those rejected by society used their new grasp on power in exactly the same way that power has always been used against them? Decades of smug, self-satisfied moral grandstanding by conservatives is the reason why the wokerati have decided now that their only play was to be similarly insufferable and shameless and hypocritical. And they haven't even really achieved power yet. Come on, cancel culture never got that bad. If cancel culture had ever really had any power, it would have taken down Brett Kavanaugh or someone like that. It couldn't even manage that. But mark my my words, if the Conservatives do not learn to compromise and deal just in the simple humanity of people with different lifestyles, then it will be worse next time. But nothing fundamentally new will emerge because it will just be another form of monotheistic exceptionalism. You reap what you fucking sow. See ya.